All right, I've got 6 o'clock. Please silence your devices. So at 6 o'clock, I call this meeting of the Saginaw City Council to order. Please rise for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Item 2 is the invocation. We have a person from the Crossroads Church here. I don't see anyone. Why don't you bow your heads with me, please? Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us here together today. Thank you for this wonderful weather we've been having. We appreciate it. We don't get it often enough, so we need to enjoy it. Thank you for this council. Thank you for this city, this great city that we serve, and the citizens here. Help us to do the best we can for the citizens and all involved. Thank you for the staff that puts so much work into this effort. We are grateful for all folks involved that make this a great city to live in. Bless us. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Item 3 is audience participation. That's on the video screen. If there's an item you wish to speak upon, please see, I guess Kim is handling that tonight. Please note that our City Secretary Janice is out, but she is watching online. Hello, Janice. So when you do make a motion, please make it loudly and clearly so Janice can hear online and she can write all that stuff down. And the second as well. So we will try to, y'all help me do that so we can help Janice out. And I welcome to all folks that are watching online. I hope you can see and hear us well. Please give us some feedback as to how the audio and the video is on the online feed. And if you're watching online and you have any questions, please contact Gabe and the city staff, and they'll gladly answer your questions. Moving forward, item number 4 is the consent agenda. Action A is minutes regarding October 6th. B is action regarding 2021 Tarrant County Emergency Services District Annual Contract Review. C is action regarding 2021 Tarrant County Fire Alarm Center Contract. D is action regarding change order number 1 to East McElroy Curb and Gutter Replacement. Any questions, comments on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Patrick. Valerie seconded. Patrick made the motion. Valerie seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, there is none. Please let the record reflect we do have a quorum. We have a full house. Thanks for coming out tonight, folks. Item number 5, introduction of Emergency Management Coordinator Joseph Lasker. For that, Chief Doug Spears.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Most of you had an opportunity to meet Joseph on a previous occasion, but I think it only appropriate to introduce him formally and to the vast audience watching online. Joseph has prepared some comments, so I don't want to steal anything he may plan to say, but I have a couple or 3 short comments. Thank you for adding this position to our city. I'm confident that sooner rather than later the positive impact will be evident. As you may remember, this is a partnership position with the City of Lake Worth. Lake Worth's been a tremendous partner to our city, particularly the fire department, for many years, and they continue to be today. I couldn't be proud of our selection. What Joseph may lack in years of emergency management experience, he more than compensates for in enthusiasm, positive attitude, and the desire to be great at his job. Those are attributes that obviously you can't teach someone. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joseph.
Thank you, Chief. Do y'all mind if I take my mask off?
You can, sure.
Okay, I just prepared a short dissertation. Good evening, citizens of Saginaw, Mayor Flippo, members of the council, city manager, administration, and department heads. I'm honored to be chosen as the city's emergency management coordinator. First and foremost, just so y'all know me, I'm a family man. My wife, Amber, of 5 years come January. My son, Hunter, who's 8, most of y'all met him a couple weeks ago, and my youngest son, Gabriel, is 4, and he is currently in the semifinals of his T-ball tournament right now. Go Frogs. I come from a mix of military and civilian law enforcement backgrounds. I served in the United States Army from 2008 to 2013 as a military police officer. I served in locations such as Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and in South Korea. I separated from the Army with the rank of sergeant and started my civilian education and career path. Shortly after I completed my basic education, I accepted a patrol officer position with the City of Kennedale. I was placed through and successfully completed the Tarrant County College Police Academy. I currently hold a advanced license as a peace officer and I'll be eligible for my master's next year. I am currently in the process of Lake Worth holding my commission. I continued my education while I was working with the City of Kennedale. I achieved a Bachelor's of Science in University Studies in 2017 and a Master's of Public Administration this past May. My interest in emergency planning started when I was a school resource officer for the Kennedale Police Department. In 2017, I started that position. I've always been a proactive individual, and I feel that a strong plan in place could not only save money but lives. Once I started getting hands-on with emergency plans and educating the public on them, the results astonished me. The feedback I received from stakeholders and administrators motivated me to make emergency administration and planning a career path to pursue. I started my second bachelor's degree 2 weeks after I completed my master's degree, and that one I'm currently doing. It's a Bachelor's of Emergency Administration and Planning out of University of North Texas. I will complete that degree in May of this next year. In this program, I am strengthening my knowledge and networking with resources in the emergency management community that will benefit the City of Saginaw. They're a very welcoming community, and I look forward to working with all of them. I'm looking to bring a strong community outreach initiative to the City of Saginaw. I've already begun the process, like I said, of networking and building relationships with community members and business owners. The response I've received from the Saginaw community has been nothing but wonderful so far. I look forward to working with each of you in some capacity. This is a constant question I get, I do have 2 offices, one at Lake Worth and one in Saginaw, and I just kind of float between the both of them. If any of the citizens want to reach me on concerns they have about what's happening in their neck of the woods, go ahead and just reach out to my email, josephLaster@saginawfire.us. Thank you all.
Council, any questions for Joe before I let you go? Any questions, anything?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to working with you, sir. Thanks, welcome. All right, thank you, Chief. Item number 6, consideration and action regarding, at 6:07, we are in a public hearing. Item number 6, consideration and action regarding recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission to approve request for a specific use permit for the operation of a tire sale and repair shop. For that, Rick Trice, Director of Public Works.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This particular SUP, the owner is Audubon Real Estate, LLC. The applicant is Dan Fritz, who's here this evening and should be able to answer any questions as we get into this more. He has applied for a retail establishment that both sells and installs accessories for trucks, basically custom wheels, custom bumpers, things of that nature. So working with the building official, we determined that that would fall under an auto service station use as defined in the zoning ordinance. It's within the Saginaw Overlay District, and so and requires an SUP to have that use in place. Thus the hearing tonight. Excuse me. The Planning and Zoning Commission met and considered the request at its October 13th meeting. It's generally in conformance with the conditions of the overlay district, with the exception of pole signs on the property. I've been told by the city attorney, and he can opine on and add to that those are protected under the Texas Local Government Code provisions, so we cannot require him to remove pole signs. Pole signs would have to either have some catastrophic event that would cause them to be damaged beyond repair or removed voluntarily by the owner. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved the SUP, but also made the recommendation that if he were to apply for a building improvement grant, that the City Council would look favorably upon that to allow him to remove those pole signs as part of his application process. We can't, of course, force him to do that, so it would be a voluntary action. Also, I would also add that since the Planning and Zoning Commission met last week, we have determined that it is likely this particular company has a brand, and their paint scheme on their building is a black and a bright yellow lettering and trim, I guess. The council may want to consider and require that as a condition of approval of the SUP, that the brick remain unaltered, unpainted, or that he return to a subsequent meeting before the council for you to review and approve a color scheme. So we would add that as part of staff's recommendation. If you got any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those. Otherwise, Mr. Fritz is here to respond. I will say, excuse me, I will say that the city manager also informed him that we would be bringing this issue up, the paint scheme, at tonight's meeting, and he sent that email to him yesterday. So,
Council, any questions for Rick before we turn it over to Mr. Fritz?
I have a question for Bren, but I can wait until after Mr. Fritz.
Okay. Cindy, you have something right now?
Yeah. I know we have an awful lot of tire stores in Saginaw right now. And I believe this is the 2J facility on Longhorn and Saginaw Boulevard.
that's correct.
Nothing against you, please understand, but is there anything else that could even possibly fit in that building? Or we just pretty much, in order to occupy it, we're going to have to be looking at?
I'm not sure that, I mean, I'm sure there's other commercial uses that would probably, fit in that setting. I mean, but he has applied, and so we're forced to deal with the application. I wouldn't characterize it necessarily as a traditional tire shop. I mean, he can, Mr. Fritz can weigh in, but it's really custom auto accessories and tires and wheels, bumpers, step up, et cetera, et cetera. So he can expand on that, but.
Would you please?
Yeah, actually, I work for Texas Tires, and I've been involved with these guys for several years now. And our company really specializes in restyling automobiles. A lot of people will bring sometimes brand new cars to us, sometimes 8 or 10-year-old cars to us. In most cases, the tires that we're pulling off of them are still roadworthy. Some of them are brand new. We'll resell them online. The older ones, we get some old tires also, and those all go for recycling. But our biggest thing is we sell wheel, tire, and lift packages, and then we'll dress up the vehicle with special bumpers, special step bars. So a lot of times we'll do like bed covers or special hoods and other accessories. Like it's not uncommon for us to put air horns on a vehicle or upgrade the stereo systems or even the lighting. A lot of the older cars are not LED lights. A lot of the newer ones are. A lot of people want their older car to be more like a new car. So we'll add LED lighting to them. There's really, there's really no limits to what people ask for that come in. And we probably have over, 10 or 15,000 different items that we have at our fingertips, because most of the major suppliers of automotive parts and accessories are right here in the DF. Well, a lot of them have a distribution right here in the DFW Metroplex. So we're the same day or next day to just about any parts that you could ever want to put on a car or a pickup truck or any type of automobile for that matter. So that's really what has driven our success, and that's the niche that we participate in. We're really not a traditional tire store. We probably started out that way back in the early 90s, but it's progressed quite a way since then.
And how many facilities do you have?
I think right now we're at like 53.
And those are all in the DFW area?
No, we have locations from our most recent acquisition was in Virginia, all the way out to New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Texas. Actually, I left out a couple. We just recently did one in Tennessee as well. We bought one of the old Sears automotive buildings that was at one of probably the most successful malls still in business in the South.
And why did you pick Saginaw?
That's a good question. In the Metroplex, I think part of our business strategy has been to take some of the lesser producing stores and consolidate them. And we're looking for areas where we don't have distribution or, and not just Saginaw, but north of here, Lake Worth, the whole north, I'm going to call it the north and northwest Fort Worth. We don't really have a location between here and Weatherford. And so we're in Granbury, Weatherford, and here. And then we've got several stores in the Haltom City, North Richland Hills area, which we're going to be closing some of those. And our intention was to try to do larger locations and do more business out of one location. And in the past, we probably haven't. We haven't really employed a lot of strategy in our growth. We just grew where it naturally happened, and now we're looking more at kind of spreading it out to where we're not cannibalizing our own efforts and trying to develop more business at single locations.
Our council, other questions? Mary?
I think it makes sense to allow this use to take place, since it's in a building that lends itself to that type of use. I do like the Planning and Zoning Commission's suggestion that you might want to apply for the BIG grant in order to help you remove the pole signs and replace it with a monument sign or something.
Mary, one thing on that before we go too far on that, that can't be as part of this SUP.
Right.
So
I'm
just
just
so we're all
saying-
clear, that's a separate issue. So
I'm just saying, assuming this is approved, I would personally encourage you to do that. I know we can't force you to. And then the color scheme doesn't lend itself to the look we want in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So I think leaving it just like it is would be better. And the painting would require repainting all the time. If it was a color we liked, it would be upkeep.
Okay.
Thank you.
other questions, council? Patrick?
I have one of Bren. So, Bren, just can you remind me, in the overlay district, does this fall into the restricted or prohibited use category?
It falls in the restricted use category, the auto shop component of it, not the retail sales component.
So when we enacted the overlay district, anybody who operates this kind of facility that is currently in the overlay is on a 10-year clock.
They are, yes, and they're grandfathered as well. But yes, correct.
Okay, so they are grandfathered. They would not have to come here and ask for an SUP to continue to operate.
That's correct. That's correct. The prior use, the reason why this application is before you is because the prior automotive service station use was discontinued for a period of 6 months, and it lost the grandfathered status associated with it.
Okay, my concern would have been, and since we are grandfathering the other restricted use businesses, they're not required to come to us in 10 years and ask for an SUP. I would be afraid we'd be setting a precedent here. But since they are not required to, they are grandfathered so long as it's the same ownership and continues to do business, they can continue right on through the 10-year threshold.
It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be based on ownership. It would be the continuation of the land use without a discontinuation of a period of 6 months.
Okay. So the difference between the restricted and prohibited uses are not grandfathered.
Prohibited uses are grandfathered as long as they're continued. It's just that if you lose your grandfathered status, you can't simply appear before council and ask for permission. A prohibition is a standing prohibition, so that can't be approved unless the underlying overlay ordinance is amended.
Okay. So that's what we're seeing here today.
This use is conditionally permitted.
Gotcha.
And that condition is the specific use permit is approved by council. But if this had been a prohibited use, this would not be possible this evening.
So allowing this use, you do not see where it sets any dangerous precedents for the city?
I'm not concerned about it, primarily because zoning is legislative in nature, not judicial, and so the precedence is very difficult to demonstrate because each case stands on its own facts.
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Other questions? Mr. Fritz, I have a couple questions for you. And I understand this building lends itself perfectly to your business. I agree. With the bays, with the lifts, it sounds like it's a good fit. My question is about branding. How important is the black and yellow brand to you and your business? Can you explain that to us?
I would say it's pretty important, but I mean, I think we're also looking for ways of incorporating our colors. Obviously, I don't know if you guys were at the P&Z meeting, but I did put some pictures in with the packet that has like our signage, and it's just a yellow sign, yellow with some black trim sometimes, depends. But, I mean, there's a lot of companies that use yellow, National Tire Battery, Best Buy. I can think of, there's a lot of companies that use yellow in their logos and their signage. I'm not going to tell you that we haven't had some issues in the past. I think what's really going to be tricky here is, obviously, if we were going to paint the building, it would be nice if, I understand everybody probably likes the looks of the red brick, and I know like one of the buildings over there is kind of like a on-off pink color. They're older buildings, and they have a lot of inconsistencies in the brick and the mortar and everything else, and we're trying to fix that up right now. But there's a lot of things that we can probably do short of repainting the whole building, like incorporate maybe possibly even a stripe with our logo and our signage, and maybe carry across the same thing. So what my intentions was to get the building to start was just to get in business and get operational. I think Gabe sent the email to me the other day. Sorry I didn't respond to it. It really didn't request a response, and I figured I would talk to you here while I was here. I'm in the middle of like 5 other projects right now too, and it's been crazy just getting through the 3 pages of stuff that we have to do here, because I don't know if you know this, but the old location went out, and then we took over, and what I thought was going to be an easy thing, moving into a store that was already up and running, turned into 3 pages of a lot of stuff, going all the way back to double check valves that weren't ever installed to begin with, and the water. And I don't know how a company even stays in business with that happening, but I guess this one slid under the radar somehow. But when it comes back to the paint, that's something that I have to leave up to, like, the ownership. It's really not up to me. Right now, we don't have plans to paint the building. I think I do understand that is an important corner for the city, and we didn't come out and request any grant money or anything for a lot of the improvements that we're doing right now, because what I wanted to do is try to think of some ways that we can maybe beautify that corner in multiple ways, not just the color scheme of the building, but maybe better landscaping, maybe nicer grass, maybe some additional hedgerow, or something. I don't even know. Maybe we do some flowers out front or something. But I've already hired a local lawn crew. Actually, I'm on my 2nd one now, 3rd if you count the guys that were out of a city north of here. But I feel real confident in these guys. They showed up on time, first time, and they've done a really good job. And the place looks really pretty good right now compared to when I first got here. We've restriped the parking lot, and we've done a lot of other repairs to it. And we've got, like I said, a list, 3 pages that we're working on. And the list that I got, just from the building inspectors, we added probably at least 10 other items to the list ourselves. And that doesn't include any of the updates or any of the new stuff that we're doing, that's business specific. That's just to get it ready for operationals. I understand that's a sensitive thing, and I definitely have communicated it back since I got the email the other day, and I talked to Larry when we first got here. And I think what I'd like to do is just try to find some ways. And then what I was thinking is, with maybe the grant money, what we could do is do some things to really make that whole corner look better. And I'm talking about from the apartments all the way around to the, other side of the property, not just the one building that's on the corner. And I kind of just leave it at that. I know there's several things that we've thought about. There's a little reader board up there on the building also. I don't know if that stays or goes. Right now, our intentions were just to leave it up there, but with the thought of improving the whole site, maybe that just gets deleted altogether. The pole sign, I had no idea that was such a sensitive subject. Matter of fact, I did not realize it until, I talked to Larry about it briefly. I was under the impression that based off of the overlay district, because I read through that like 10 times, make sure I understood it. It was my understanding that all that stuff had to be out by 2028 or something like that, regardless. But our original intention wasn't just to come in and start cutting things down. If I was putting a pole sign there, I would have done it totally different than that myself. But it's it's there, and it's something that provides some utility, and it would really help us in our business. And also, I think the business that we intend to do there is probably 4 times what the previous business ever did in the past. And will definitely bring some positive, I think it'll definitely be a benefit to the city just on the tax base alone. Typically, a store of this level is one of our higher producing stores in our company. And we intend for this to be that. When we originally were looking, we were looking at Lake Worth, the west side, and from Saginaw out. And we chose this location not just because of Saginaw and North Fort Worth, but because it gives us a good shot kind of up the 35 corridor at a lot of these other cities just north of here. And we typically will draw, we'll draw business as far as 50 miles away. I mean, and it's incredible, but we do a lot of internet advertising. And, people will drive across the Metroplex to go to our stores. And I run into people every day. And actually, since I've been down there, I've run into people when I stop and get gas here, and they see my shirt, and they ask about our company, and they talk about wanting to purchase product that we sell right here in Saginaw. And I tell them, well, that's good, because we're getting ready to open a store here. And I've had people exclaim, immediately, "Yeah, that's awesome, man! I'm so glad that you guys are here. I don't have to drive somewhere else now." And I was, it doesn't. I mean, not everything we touch works out perfect, but we do try to make sure that the end result is everybody's happy, and and we bring I do want to share one story with you real quick, and this would be like one of the first times that I was ever even involved with the company, and this is probably 5 years ago. But I was sitting at one of our locations up in Louisville, and a guy comes in with a tire that's bad, and he just wants to buy one tire, and we're like, well, we don't really just sell singles, but we told him that we'd be glad to get him one and put it in, and by the way, we do free flat repairs also, just as a service. If people come in with a flat tire, we'll fix it for free, and they just leave, and they don't have to buy anything. I mean, it's just something that our owner of the company feels real strong about, providing additional service. But our finance programs are such that if people want to, they can basically buy something and pay it off over 3 or 4 months, and there's no interest. And so at the end of the day, this guy walks in, and I walked out with one of the other guys, and we looked at his tire that he was complaining about, and the rest of the tires on the car, and they were just as bad as that one. I mean, you could practically see the air through the tire on the inside. So we ended up selling him a whole set of tires for like, I don't know, it was like $250 or something like that, $280. And he walked out the happiest person I've ever seen in my life, driving a safe car and wasn't involved in any accidents. Probably at least the end of that day, which I would be surprised if he even made it home without having another flat tire, and had the ability to spread that out over 5 or 6 paychecks. And I was just thinking, wow, that's great. That alone, I think, is worth having us around, and I'm sure that other tire places do that as well. But we take it to a different level a lot of times. So I've probably talked my limit. So
And I appreciate it. Good information. I appreciate
I
Mr.
can
Fritz.
keep going if you want me
No,
to.
no, I understand a little better what you do, and I appreciate that. I'm fully supportive of this specific use permit, with the caveat I would like to put in, I was going to ask Brand if we can put in that the brick is not painted, brick stays brick color. Can we say that?
Yes, absolutely. That can be a
Okay.
condition that's dictated in the
That
FUP.
would be my only condition on this. Everything else, I'm happy with you. Coming on in. We can talk signs later down the road if you want to, but you're happy with the sign right now, that's fine. Council, other questions, concerns, comments?
I just wanted to make a comment.
Go ahead.
The black and yellow together, you could accent with it and make it a really pretty place without having to black it out and everything. That's a pretty prominent corner, and that's the first gateway in the Saginaw. So
Well, I think, we've done some chrome accents sometimes, or some, like stainless, and there's a lot of things that you can do with it to dress it up. I think so are you proposing or saying that the conditional use permit is based off of us keeping the brick?
Yes.
He's not saying it, I just said that.
Yeah.
So that was my proposal to the council.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what does the rest of the council think? Go ahead. Cindy, you have a question?
I just have one more question. First of all, I looked at the picture that you had provided, and actually the black does not look that bad. I mean, the brick is so dark anyway. I don't think that there would be that stark of a difference. But in the parking lot, when it was the previous business there, we used it several times, and getting in and out of that place was a pain. It looks like, according to the picture that you provided, that you're going to open up the driveway that's on the boulevard.
Yes, for sure.
So we'll be able to access instead of having to go around and try to.
Did they not have that open before?
No.
Yeah, that would. There's a very good chance we'll cut all those bars that are up there right now. There's a bar blocking the driveway. A lot of times we just cut those down and just take them out. Just that way people don't have to run into them accidentally.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I believe that drive onto the boulevard was required to be closed by the railroad as part of those improvements we did at that intersection. I'm not going to be allowed to open that driveway back up,
Really?
I don't believe.
Okay. I didn't realize that. Okay, it's a railroad thing.
Why would that affect the traffic? To what?
because there's railroad tracks right there.
It was a text dot requirement.
It's a text dot plan, yeah, I remember it being close to that.
Oh, because
Access it there because
the tracks are right there by the driveway?
I guess I just never realized that would have been an issue because I see cars stopped there every day for the red light. So I don't know. I don't understand how that would impact the train tracks, but
Well, there's a train track that crosses the boulevard right there. It's not used very often, but it is there, and it is.
No, it was probably a text dot requirement. We'd have to go back and look and see because of the location of that relative to the intersections. Most things the engineers can address.
I don't know how you would have an address at 836 South Saginaw Boulevard and not have a driveway onto South Saginaw Boulevard, but this is the first I've heard of that.
Gabe?
Mr. Mayor, just briefly summarize things. Staff has been very clear with Mr. Fritz what the expectations and the standards were, crystal clear. We work very hard to work with you. I hope you respect that. I had a personal occasion to see one of their locations in person, the Haltom City location. I was actually getting a Haltom City COVID test at the Haltom City CVS. The bright yellow and black, to your point, Mr. Mayor, is not in keeping with what I believe the council's vision for the overlay boulevard is. So I would concur, and staff would concur with that recommendation. To Councilmember Big Horse's comment and point, this site, the question for the council is, do you want a user or do you want a vacant building? It's very challenging with access. Short of a redevelopment opportunity for the adjacent apartments, there's not much more reasonably that we could expect. I believe Rick could tell you we had a Starbucks look at this location. The circulation didn't work. We had maybe a 7-Eleven as well. It's a tough site because it's small. We're happy to have a user so long as it's it's appropriate and looks nice, and happy to work with Texas Tire in the future, hopefully.
Thank you.
All right, council, other questions? Other questions for Mr. Fritz? All right, staff, anything else to add? We good? Everybody good? All right. Then at 6:37, I'll take us out of the public hearing. Oh, I should ask if there's any questions from the audience. I don't think anybody's turned a card in, have they? Okay, thank you. So 6:37, we're out of the public hearing. Council, I would entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the SUP with the condition that you've mentioned. No other conditions.
I'll second. All right, so Patrick made the motion, Mr. Beasley seconded. Will you state those conditions? Do we need to state the condition, Bryn?
I think it's clear since we have a recording of the meeting.
Okay, excellent.
And I will add it to the SUP ordinance.
The brick stays brick.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. All right, so Patrick made the motion, Mr. Beasley second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? All right. Thanks, sir. One thing, Janice just sent me a text, so make sure everybody turns on their microphone. She's listening, and not everybody has their mics on, so please. So. All right, moving forward, item number 7. Consideration action regarding escrow agreement between Levon White, Cheryl Elaine Walker, as successor trustee, and Provident. For that, City Manager Gabe Rayner.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a few brief comments, and then I'll defer to the city attorney for further information. So what we're considering this evening is the creation of a public improvement district to support the development of this property. We've had a number of workshops to explain the mechanics, the proposed development plan. I want to mention a few things. Number one, creation of the public improvement district this night or tonight does not fund it, so the council would come back at a future date and either authorize debt to be issued to fund public improvements or allow for reimbursements. It allows for the dissolution, which Bryn can go into detail. So it's just another step in the process. Bryn might touch on some details, and then the applicant representative from Provident is here as well if you have questions.
Yes, thank you. So this is a vehicle or tool just as an insurance policy. We're currently working diligently to negotiate a development agreement, and I think we have agreement with respect to the substantive terms, but it's just simply not, the process is too quick to have it fully negotiated and drafted for tonight's meeting. And so this agreement contemplates that if one of three benchmarks does not occur, that I'm entitled to supply you with pre-completed dissolution petition for this PID, because the PID won't be necessary if one of three things does not occur. So number one, if by December 31st of this year we're not able to secure approval from council for a development agreement that outlines all the terms of the development, you'll have a pre-executed dissolution petition provided to you. State law requires that the PID be dissolved in the same manner that it is created, and that's why we have the need for the petition. Number two, if the property sale does not close by March 31st of next year, that's the second trigger. If that doesn't occur, obviously the current property owners are not interested in developing this property themselves, and so they're not seeking a PID with funding, et cetera. And then finally, if a contract to construct the authorized improvements that the PID is funding is not executed with a construction company between Provident and a construction company within 18 months of today's date, if there's a change in the economy and there's no longer a desire to develop the property, that is the third and final trigger, which would authorize me to supply you with the executed dissolution petition. And so we have executed dissolution petition from both the current owners and from the prospective future owner, Provident. This agreement also requires that if it's sold to any third party, that as a condition to any sale, that third party execute a dissolution petition and supply it to us. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions for Brent?
I do. We have
Sure.
an amount in this agreement of $14 million. This is the cost to acquire and construct the proposed authorized improvements. I'm assuming that would be the capital exposure of what we would be seeking for bonds. $14 million.
So not entirely. It contemplates that the $14 million can come from other sources as well, and Gabe can probably speak to the dollars better than I can.
So this is the first steps in a series of others. We are working with Provident to determine and refine the probable cost for future public improvements. The development agreement, as Brent mentioned, will kind of outline a few of these things. One of the things we've said, and for the public listening, is that the future construction, which is the vast majority of the cost of Western Center extending across 156, triggers a future construction of a park amenity, which will be paid for by the PID. So we're working with Provident to, like I say, refine those numbers. And before the development agreement comes before the council, that'll all be put to paper, and then we'll have solid numbers for you.
So by agreeing to this tonight, are we not communicating to the developer that we're contemplating $14 million? What are we communicating to them by placing this number in this document?
I don't know that the number truly needed to be there, frankly. I think it's just additional detail of what the parties believe may be necessary. But we have regular conversations with the developer and the city's team, and everyone understands that the actual ultimate bond issue has to be supportable by the assessments. And whether it's $14 million or some number far beneath that, frankly, the underwriter's going to have to approve that. So this is not a guarantee whatsoever that we support a $14 million bond issue.
Yeah, the last that I had understood, the underwriters were suggesting a 3-to-1 ratio. That would mean we'd have to value at $42 million. And the last numbers that I heard, valuations weren't going to get to $42 million.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Farr, that's absolutely correct and a great point. So discussions, I forgot to recognize, don't want to not recognize him, but Kyle is here from P3, who is our third-party pit administrator. We'll bring back more information to you. There's some confidence-giving Providence credit capabilities, as well as their future involvement with a good portion of the property, the multifamily, that the bond coverage ratio will be less than 3-to-1. In fact, you kind of mentioned this, the value of the land can only generate X amount. We can't say we're going to have, $500 million of assessed value. It has to be based on reasonable projections. So likely, based on our discussions, the bond coverage is going to be significantly under 3 and probably closer to 2. But again, as Bryn mentioned, really the risk, if there's any, is on Provident because as an underwriter, the underwriter is going to prove that or not, and they will ultimately bear that burden through selling the property to future tenants who have to pay assessments or pay it themselves as property holder for some amount of time.
So we're considering 2-to-1 versus 3-to-1.
I don't think we have a number yet, but the preliminary analysis I've seen is under 3-to-1. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Gabe.
And I wasn't clear on this item. This is number 7. This is the escrow agreement, so I apologize for not being clear. This is 8 is the PID itself. This is the escrow agreement related to the PID. Will you explain that, Bryn, so we're clear on what we're discussing on number 7?
Sure, that's essentially what I described. This is to dissolve the PID if one of these 3 elements does not occur.
Just want to make sure we're clear. Mary, you have a question?
For the item that we are considering now for the dissolution, it's called the Saginaw Western Center Public Improvement District. And then for the next item, it's called the Western Center Public Improvement District without the word Saginaw in there. Does that matter? Was that on purpose or?
No, I think Saginaw is merely the term. It's just intended to be descriptive.
So it's not a problem to, okay.
All right, so other questions, concerns on the escrow agreement, which is item number 7? If no other concerns, no other questions, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the escrow agreement as presented.
Thank you, Patrick. Do I have a second? Charlie Tucker, second. So motion by Patrick, Charlie, second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? All right, very nice, thank you. So item number 8. Item number 8 at 6:48, we're in a public hearing. Consideration action regarding the resolution of the City Council creating the Western Center Public Improvement District in accordance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For that, City Manager Gabriel.
Mr. Mayor, don't have anything, any additional information other than Representative, the developer, Dorothy Parks, is here. If you have any specific questions, she would be able to address them.
So council questions, let's start. Questions for Gabe and staff first. Or questions for the developer or questions for our P3, our administrator? Either one. We got folks here that are experts here ready to answer some questions. So any questions y'all have about the PID?
Mr. Mayor, just again, want to be clear, a lot of the nuts and bolts and the details will be accomplished in the development agreement, which will come for council review and action at a later date. Right. In principle, I think everybody's been made aware of the discussions to date, and we'll talk about that later. But this is kind of just a part of the steps of the sequence.
Right. This is just a step to create the district. This is not the development plan. This is
That's
just
correct.
creating the PID, Public Improvement District associated with the Western Center project. So that's all this will be approved for item 8. So council, any questions for the folks in the audience? I'm pretty clear. I think everybody else is pretty clear on where we are and what we're doing. If, of course, any comments from the audience? It is a public hearing. I don't know if anybody else here that wants to speak, but if you are, please, you may approach the mic and speak, since we are in a public hearing. If
So
not,
is there a dollar amount associated with this right now, what we're doing, or no?
No, this just would create the district. As we mentioned earlier, the district is not funded. That would require council action in the future, whether that's authorizing a bond issue or a reimbursement basis. So if the triggers that Bryn outlined, if they're not met, or if Provident doesn't close on the property, the district goes away, it's dissolved.
Okay.
Patrick?
Sorry.
It caused me to ask a question. Thanks, appreciate that. Outside of the three triggers we've discussed, outside of those three triggers, is convenience an option without penalty?
So the only way we can dissolve the district, if one of those three triggers does not occur, would be if the then current owner voluntarily submitted a dissolution petition. Otherwise, we would have some invisible lines on the ground, especially if we hadn't funded anything, and we would have a district in name only, in perpetuity.
With no option to dissolve it by convenience?
That's correct. The statute does not allow for dissolution by convenience. That's correct.
Okay.
Other questions, council? Questions, comments? If not, then at 6:51, I take us out of a public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we establish the Western Center Public Improvement District as presented with the three triggers. Boy, I almost said that backwards. Three triggers. Understood.
Thank you, Patrick.
I'll second.
Charles, Mr. Beasley seconds. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Excellent.
And just for clarification, I mean, that's already been established by the prior motion, but just for the record.
I just wanted all of us to acknowledge that we couldn't just back out because we woke up one morning and thought, hey, I didn't like that idea.
All right, we have appeared. Congratulations, Provident. All right. Item number 9, discussion of Christmas events. Mayor Pro Tem Valerie Tanksley.
Well, Mayor and Council, I'm back again. I'd like to propose that we approve to go ahead and go forward with different Christmas activities this year. I know we're still worried about the COVID and the social distancing and everything, so what I'd like to know is if we could approve a Christmas parade on Friday, December the 4th, and the tree lighting. Mr. and Miss Claus could show up on the fire truck, not get off of it because they have to get back to the North Pole. The cars could park across the street at Halfley Center, so nobody had to get out of their car. They could stay in their car and still see the Christmas tree lit up. Of course, we couldn't do the stuff in the rec center like we normally do, so on Saturday, December the 5th, the Farmers Market or Community Link, they're having a Christmas market from 8 to 12. So I would like to do something for all the crafters. We have a lot of seniors and a lot of people that got things geared up for Training Grain, and we didn't get to have it. And so I thought maybe we could block off the new parking lot over by the market. People could sit up there, no cost to the citizens, just have a Christmas in the park. They could set up under the pavilions. I could get some bands to come and people to sing Christmas carols and stuff. People could park on Knowles. I know parking might be a bit of a problem, but they could park on Knowles, and maybe when they go in the entrance of the parking lot over there in the grassy area, by then it'll be dead, so we won't have green grass there in the park. And I thought that parking lot would be safe for the seniors, and there's some seniors that were interested in getting something going for Christmas. And if anybody from the market, they want to stay, they're more than welcome to. I can say the event we had on October the 3rd, it turned out pretty good, and we only had 11 days of promoting it. And so I think it would have been a little bit better. But people really enjoyed it. They got out, they had some family time. They wore their mask, and they had a good time. And I just thought maybe we could do it again.
What does the rest of the council think? Thoughts? ideas? Mary?
Well, for our social chairman, I'm glad you're coming up with these ideas, and as long as we can do it safely, which we did in the October event, and as long as we don't find ourselves in a desperate situation as far as the pandemic closer to time, because there are some projections that it might be really bad. So, assuming it's still somewhat safe and everybody wears a mask and all that, I think it's a good idea.
What does everybody else think? Cindy, what do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I think for the short period of time that we had getting the activities and people to show up for booths and things at the Police Recognition Day, it was successful. I know just about everybody I talk to says, oh, we need more of this. They really enjoyed getting out. We had to cancel our Christmas parade at the last minute because of weather. So if we have to cancel this at the last minute, I don't see that as a problem. So I say let's go forward. Let's do it. Let's not wait 11 days before the event to start it.
Yeah.
Mr. Tucker?
I think this is great. As long as one thing, masks are mandatory. It's not an option. But yeah, other than that would be great.
Mr. Farr?
I'm on board with it.
Mr. Beasley?
Great idea. I'm on board.
I got a question. Will people show up? That's my question. What do you think?
I think if we promote it right, they will.
Okay.
We had quite a few, and we only had 9 days of promotion on October the 3rd, and I had quite a few people show up. They did.
We think we can do it safely and people show up? Let's do it.
Okay. And I don't want to interfere with the community link part, because theirs is from 8 to 12, but we could do it like from 1 to 6, and if they want to stay, they're more than welcome to. Okay. I know they have to pay for the community link part, but I don't think we should charge them for this. I think let's just have some fun.
So, walking through, so December 4th would be the parade, a parade of some sort with folks in their cars in the parking lot at the Hafley Center, and then light the tree remotely, however we do it. Click yay, something like that.
Yeah.
So that would be that. And then the 5th would be the event at the farmers market. So, all right. And the farmers market is going to happen that day, but it's a Christmas market. Is that what's going on?
Is a what?
Farmers market is going to happen that day, but it's a Christmas market.
They're from 8 to 12, and I thought we could do it like from 1 to 6 or something.
Okay. Sure. I'm happy. We got direction? Staff's got direction? All right. Let's move forward. Thank you,
We're
Valerie.
going to start earlier this time, okay? Okay.
Thank you, Valerie. All right, at 6:57, the recess into workshop. Item number 11, update and discussion regarding Belt Mill project. Jim Makins and Don Allen. And I guess Gabe's going to introduce this. Sorry, Gabe.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, happy to introduce a few folks to you this evening. So we've been working with Jim Makins, Don Allen, Doug Powell with the Land Planning Group, McAdams, for a couple of years now. So this is Belt Mill is the former Kranz Farm property. Mr. Allen has the entire property under contract. About 300 acres or so of that is in Fort Worth, which is already zoned single-family residential and will develop as such. Really enjoy the approach with Jim and Don and Doug and their staff being very thoughtful and considerate. It was a really unique project for Saginaw, and their desire is to get feedback from you before they go through the entitlement process. We'll mention that this project is definitely PID worthy, and we would look at, so long as it's entitled in the future, likely creating a PID to fund a number of public improvements, whether that's parks, open space. There's certainly a lot of street and signalization work needed. So with that, I'd like to allow them to present.
Thank you, Gabe. Again, should I take my mask off?
Whatever you want to. It's up to you.
Is it easier for you to understand me if I take my mask off?
Yes.
Okay.
So please introduce yourself.
I'm okay.
No.
I might just not snuggle up to the microphone if that's all right. Thank you. My name's Don Allen. I'm with Lackland Holdings. We're a Fort Worth-based real estate developer. We're here tonight to talk to you about this project, as Gabe introduced. I have with us Doug Powell with the planning and engineering firm of McAdams, and also Jim Makins, who represents the Kranz family. And as Gabe mentioned, we've had this property under contract and have been working on it for quite some time. Mr. Makins, I believe, has met probably with a lot of city staff and maybe a few council members over time, just in the past presenting some ideas on this property. We've refined them, gone a lot further, have some things to show you tonight, but also to hear to listen and maybe get a little feedback before we come in with a formal proposal. So, who has the? Oh, so how do I? All right.
All right, will you speak up? I just got a note that they can't hear you very well online, so.
Is this better?
I think so.
Does that help? Okay.
Yes, sir, please.
All right. One of the things early on that McAdams did was really do some research into the history, the area, what the city wants, things like that. And they pulled out a couple of things that kind of helped govern a lot of what we tried to create in this property. One of them was from your 2016 Economic Development Plan. It says, capitalize on Saginaw's great location, good schools, and small town, family-oriented feel by targeting, attracting, and facilitating several unique places and destination businesses where people can hang out and experience Saginaw. And another thing that kind of had some resonance with us as we were working through this land plan and our options was this City Council vision statement that said Saginaw leverages its location and history to attract destination businesses, family-oriented visual entertainment centers, dining establishments, and amenities that lead our citizens to stay and play here, and neighbors to come and experience our character. And we feel like we have an opportunity to really accomplish some of these goals. Our property that we're discussing tonight, I'm sure you're all aware, but is the Saginaw portion of the Kranz family property. It's located on the north side of Bailey Boswell, in between Wagley Robertson Road and Saginaw Boulevard. All of our frontage along Saginaw Boulevard, obviously, is we are basically bifurcated from the road by two railroads, as y'all are well aware. So all of our access through the property will be from Bailey Boswell Road and Wagley Robertson. And as you're aware, also how the bridge is going to work for the flyover along Bailey Boswell. A lot of our frontage along Bailey Boswell will be where the bridge is. So there will be a frontage road there that you can drive into and out of our property, but people coming from the west to access our property will have one road under the bridge to access the property, but primarily the access into the property will be at Belt Mill Parkway, as we're calling it. This spine road's kind of through the middle of the street, middle of the property, where it intersects with Bailey Boswell. That's the front door. It's highly visible. It made sense to take advantage of that, I think. So what we did is we started looking at, this is the old plan versus the new plan. The old plan, I believe some of y'all have seen. Over time, we looked at opportunities and how the old plan worked. One of the things we started doing is we started doing some engineering and realizing that at the entry to the property or somewhere along there, we have to have significantly more detention than we had accounted for earlier. So the small ponds that you see on the left morphed into a very large pond that you see in the plan on the right. And then our plan is to have a detention on the opposite side, on the other side of Belt Mill Parkway too, but rather than having a pond on that side, have an open a dry detention area, so to speak. They would only be wet during the rain. So these kind of led us to really rethink the land plan. And again, between the fact that the front door is right there at Belt Mill Parkway at Bailey Boswell, everyone driving by will see that every day. It makes sense to say, that's our front door. Let's put our best stuff right there instead of burying it in the middle of the property. And frankly, from a retail standpoint or a restaurant standpoint, That was a lot more desirable, it seems, to people in the business. They like the visibility more than anything else. So we've reconfigured the property in the land plan a little bit. This land plan is still a little bit of a work in progress, and again, we're going to tailor it a little bit based on some comments we hear from y'all later tonight, we hope. We did go up slightly from like maybe a little over 100,000 square feet in total commercial use to 128,000 square foot in use. Again, right now in the plan, the number of apartment units went down, the number of townhouse units went up, the number of single-family units went up a little bit. But again, that's not all set in stone, and the final plan, again, will be based on some of our discussions here tonight. A little more detail here. Our retail now is all, is this a pointer? Yeah, I apologize. I left mine at the office. But our frontage along Bailey Boswell now is all retail components, and we see that retail again. This is not a location because of the bridge and because of the non-access to Saginaw Boulevard. A big box retailer or a large retail center is not going to be located here. So it's just not as marketable. But what we do have is we see this retail as being local retail, service retail, possibly a combination of two-story buildings where you have retail on the first floor and professional office on the second floor, insurance agents, doctors, lawyers, any kind of service businesses, and so kind of create a nice environment there. And then the cluster of...
So the red is all commercial, correct?
I'm sorry?
The red is all commercial?
Yes, the red is all commercial, and the four buildings that are kind of lined up along Bailey Boswell Road, those are multi-purpose commercial buildings that would have tenants in. The red that are kind of in a cluster, they're closer to the lake, that's the restaurant component. And we see that as what we'd like to create is what has become a little bit popular, is creating kind of a restaurant cluster area, and I'll focus on that just briefly here in a second. So here's some images just to give you an idea of what we're trying to create between the retail and especially the restaurants is create some outdoor spaces as part of the restaurant cluster, take advantage of the detention pond and some open green space to create kind of a, not just a few tilt wall buildings with some restaurants in them and some kind of facade, but have some synergy there. Yeah. You might go have a cocktail at one restaurant and then have dinner at another restaurant and walk over to have dessert at a third. That type of opportunity, And the connection and the closeness of the retail means that if there's a Starbucks over in the retail area, you can walk over to Starbucks or coffee shop, I should say, and then walk back, to have dinner. Those types of things. That's what we're trying to create here. And the way we kind of see this working with this large detention pond is to basically over excavate it and create a full-time wet pond with a fountain and water feature in the middle to keep the water quality good. It also creates some visual impact.
How large do you anticipate that pond being?
Sorry?
How large do you anticipate the pond being? How many acres is that pond?
Doug, is it? Yeah, it's around 2 acres. Don't hold me to that, but it's in that range. Yeah, it's not a 50 by 50. It's not a little bitty thing. No, it's a large pond. But we started looking at it and said, well, let's take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Physically, it wants to be right there at our front door because that's where everything drains to. So that's the most logical place from an engineering standpoint to put it. But it also then let's make it an amenity. Let's work. We've broached the idea with the staff, and they seem very receptive. And it obviously will be up to you to make it a city park. And maybe it's a park that, whether the city owns it or not, but our business association or whatever we create would maintain it for the city. But it would also then provide the advantage of you have all these restaurants, and we can tie our open space into that city park, have a dock, have exercise areas, have a trail around the pond, create kind of an environment, basically, that people want to go and hang out. So that really, as much as anything, drove a lot of some changes you see in the plan. We're very excited about it again. Once Bailey Boswell is open and the bridge is open, it's going to carry a lot of traffic on a daily basis. And the fact that everybody that drives there every day will see that cluster of restaurants and that retail over there, that's great marketing. So that it just made sense to modify our plan accordingly. Again, these are just some images of some ideas of what the retail might look like. We're trying not to create some enhancements. We've created kind of a PD ordinance so that we could tailor some of that stuff to create some, whether the developer that ends up with that wants to go kind of a more the near traditional small town Main Street kind of look, or he may want to go kind of a modern, kind of like you see a lot of stuff like an Austin kind of look, that type of thing. I mean, there's all sorts of options there, and whoever ends up being the retail developer ultimately, we are not the retail developer, but we're trying to create something that has some value and some pizzazz, and also have some sustainability. We do have a multifamily component in the plan, and always have. We are trying to create some architectural standards for those multifamily folks so that we want something that we have a lot of property here. We want everything in there to kind of look upscale, to look nice, to be saleable, and to be sustainable so that 10 years from now it still looks good. So these are some images of some ideas of existing apartment complexes. We might, see certain multifamily developers. There is interest for multifamily in this property as well as the retail. So, and I should mention also, we've already had discussions about the staff. What we would be willing to do is not only create some development standards in a PD, but also then create a development agreement so that you can enforce them regardless of what the state laws that kind of limit that process right now. So, but there's a workaround for that. There are some townhouse in the plan. Here's some images of, these are local townhouse complexes in different places. We want to create enough density again that we have support for our local retail and our restaurants and things like that, and a lot of it to be walkable, and I'll show you a trail plan in a minute. And there will be, we foresee at least a single-family component in this also, but again, it's not the major part, but there probably be some single-family in here, and we're willing to talk about that also as far as what your thoughts and plans are. This is what I was alluding to earlier. All of the red lines you see here are trails along the Belt Mill Parkway, along our perimeter with Bailey Boswell, with Wagley Robertson Road, and even along the railroad as discussed previously, I believe, in some discussions. So without even interior sidewalks within neighborhoods, what you see right here, that's 2.3 miles of trails. And we want to do this because we want to connect all these people into our retail and to our restaurant complex.
Well, the trails will extend up into the Fort Worth section as well, right?
They will. They will connect up into the Fort Worth sections, and so people would be able to walk they will be able to walk all the way from the north end of the Fort Worth section all the way south, all the way to the restaurants. If they wanted to. That's a long walk, but.
So where does Belt Mill Parkway end up?
It ends up heading more or less, it kind of turns, it goes a little more northward and kind of goes north. It does get smaller in the Fort Worth section of the property. It becomes just a collector street. But it will connect in the future when Fort Worth extends it. Heritage Trace Parkway will one of these days obviously extend from Saginaw Boulevard over to Wagley Robertson and probably further east. But that's that railroad crossing and all of that. That's several years, I think, in the future before Fort Worth has the money to spend that. And we don't need our traffic, by the way, we've already submitted a TIA and gone back and forth with your consultant multiple times, and our traffic works for all of these uses. We will have some improvements to make to signalization at Wagley Robertson and at Bailey Boswell and some turn lanes, but we've proven up, and your consultants have confirmed that our traffic does work for all of this. One of the things we are doing with Belt Mill Parkway is we're creating some green belts along Belt Mill Parkway and enhancing the irrigation, the landscaping, along Belt, to create a lot more of more than just a road. We want it to be a landscaped parkway. So, another thing that's been some questions, and this is, if this is confusing, I apologize, but what this is, it shows you kind of a cross-section from Saginaw Boulevard into our property, just to show the separation between Saginaw Boulevard and then the BNSF Railroad, and separation, then the UP Railroad, and I might have that backwards, I apologize. But then we've incorporated a masonry wall to screen sound there along the railroad, and then a 40-foot buffer with a trail, as I alluded to earlier, between the masonry wall and our uses, so that.
Is the wall that yellow?
I'm sorry?
Is the wall that yellow portion?
No, it's right next to the railroad on the right-hand side of that last railroad. It doesn't show. Yeah, so it is. There's the wall right there where the gray turns to green, and then you have some trees, and then the trail. The yellow is the trail. So, and with that, again, we don't want to take too much of your time tonight, but that's kind of where we are. This is the plan as it is today. As I say, it's still a work in progress. We want to hear your thoughts. This plan does have an awful lot of townhouse on it, and some of that was just because we haven't plugged in other things yet. I will tell you that, as I said, from the multifamily side, there is 25 acres in here right now. We believe that we have users already willing to contract for that. We've then also been approached by an age-restricted multifamily community about adding more multifamily, but again, that would be something, that's why we're here, is to hear what comments you have over all of these various uses. So
would neighborhood 3, 4, and 5 be the multifamily?
Yes, I'm having a hard time reading that. Let me look on this. Yes, 3, 4, and 5 are the multifamily.
And then neighborhood 6, 7, and 9, are those townhomes?
Those are drawn as townhomes right now.
The neighborhood 8?
Yes, is also drawn as townhomes.
And neighborhood 10 is single family?
Yes.
Is the bigger single family, or however you call it? Okay.
Well, those are not drawn as very big lots right now, and that's the other thing we want to talk to you is what your.
But those are single
if
family.
we have it at just classic single family detached. What's achievable? What would you like to see?
I got you. Okay.
So.
All right, council questions. Mary?
Thank you. That was a good presentation, and it's very exciting. When I was going through this whole presentation, that you didn't allude to everything in here, I noticed discussion of signs. There was a sign called a blade sign, and I just don't know what that is.
A blade, I'll try and explain it, and my planner may cringe, but I think a blade sign is a sign that you hang off of a light pole. Is that what you're alluding to, or is this on the building itself? Like a sign that projects vertically from the side of the building, rather than being flat on the building. It's sometimes at the corner of the building or something like that when a sign protrudes out. It may be oriented vertically or horizontally, but.
And then, let's see. Have you all discussed the possibility of including some art installations, such as sculpture or that type of amenity? I think it would be lovely.
I haven't. We haven't. Obviously, we haven't gotten that far in the details, but that's not a bad suggestion, and it's something to talk about, especially maybe in that restaurant cluster, creating some kind of. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's not A bad suggestion is certainly something we'd be willing to see if we can figure it
Consider.
out.
And when this was first introduced as a concept, there was set aside space for a community building.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if that's still in the plans, and I think that would be a great addition if we could have that.
We talked about that, and we're still open to that. I think at the time we talked, maybe it would be the library or whatever else, and believe that that's kind of now headed a different direction, maybe. Y'all are working on something, so if there is a city desire for something like that, we'd be willing to see if we could incorporate something like that. It's just, I don't know if the city has a program or has something that you could see a use for.
Maybe a senior center or a community center, perhaps. Or, who knows what else. But I thought it was
Yes.
a good addition to the project.
I don't disagree. And it's certainly something, actually, building, yeah. Sure that's not well, in the restaurant cluster there, kind of behind them, there's one long building that's red. Mm-hmm. Kind of that was originally that community building. We kind of kept it as a placeholder, but converted it because the thought was at the time we're not hearing what the city needs or wants out of it, but that's certainly something we'd be willing to consider. I mean, because that draws traffic and people into our.
And I just wanted to get those thoughts out there, and further on down the line, that will be the time when we nail down those types of things.
And I guess what we're looking for, if the city has a strong desire for that and has something they can foresee for that, let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're very open to that.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I like this design. This is a lot more calm design. The other one, I just got tired looking at it. This is a much better design. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to extend the detention area to have them both be wet? Maybe dig a little deeper, not fill it up quite so much, so you could still that would allow a little more area for fishing. Maybe people want a kayak or paddle boats or something like that. Something small, just
feasible from a. Yeah, we can look at that. We actually kind of like the idea of having the pond and the wet and the look on one side, and then having again, that may just be grass and green and whatever, but kind of having differences, so to speak. That's really a little bit your pleasure, I guess. If you really want that, then that is feasible.
Well, I worked over in the Houston Sugarland area, and they had the dry detention ponds, and they were just, in my opinion, unsightly. Mm-hmm. It's like, do something useful with that property. Mm-hmm. And Mary stole my question about the community center type thing, but it would also be nice to have something like a theater in there that people could use it for, like community plays, performances. We have things in the park, but sometimes the weather's bad. We can't do things in the park.
An amphitheater?
And yes, something like that would be nice. But this design is much better. It flows a lot better. But one other question, since part of this is going to be Fort Worth, part of this is going to be Saginaw, what sort of conflict are we expecting in the exterior designs of buildings and homes and things? Because personally, since we're Saginaw, we're not South Lake. I don't want to have a South Lake kind of feel to this. I want to have a Saginaw feel to this. We're grain elevators, we're trains. I would love to have something.
I understand.
Along that line.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into conflict with Fort Worth over this.
I don't know that the Fort Worth portion will look just like the Saginaw portion, but frankly, that we've kind of configured it in the way there's maybe three. But there's a connection along Built Mill Parkway, and then 2 or maybe 3 other connections throughout the neighborhoods on the north. But we really almost see it kind of being like it's going to be, the Fort Worth side will be a little bit of its own community, but it's all residential. And then we want to focus on internalizing this and making it all feel connected and cohesive, so to speak, common signage, things like that, wayfinding. So I don't know that we can expect the same thing in Fort Worth that we can in Saginaw, but the nice thing is that we'll have 700 homes or whatever in Fort Worth to drive by every day, drive by the retail, drive by the restaurant, and help to, drive some of that business and that activity. So,
Okay.
But we're not trying to commingle them as much as trying to make them two separate neighborhoods.
Okay.
They'll be connected and they won't feel totally dissimilar, but they can each kind of stand alone.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Very good, but great job on the design. Thank you for this.
All right.
Charlie? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm good. I'd like to see a storefront police or fireplace, if we're going to have that up there or something.
You want us to build another fire department, Valerie?
Not a big one.
Doug is getting all he needs. Don't give Doug any more ideas.
Just something where a fire truck could park or something in a police department,
Well, we could discuss
Public
maybe-
Works offices would be great there, so.
We could discuss a small satellite police station might be something, but
Okay.
anything else?
Otherwise, it looks good. Thank you. And you
Far?
can fish.
I think it's well thought out. I think you guys have brought a couple of different iterations up here over the past few years. Most everyone on the council has some apprehension towards high-density housing. One of them included. This development at 100 acres would essentially be the most densely populated 100 acres in Saginaw when it's developed. And to Valerie's point, I think it would be a great idea for us to have a satellite police station in this community. And simply for the reasons of, as you're looking at neighborhood number 4, for example, there's a sizable parking lot right there adjacent to the railroad tracks. That's a perfect opportunity for drug transaction. These rails carry a lot more than paid cargo.
Yeah, I understand that.
So there are opportunities here that are unique that our chief of police can probably help guide some of the things that are going on here along the railroad corridor, some of these back areas that may promote, ne'er-do-well activity. So I really like the idea that you brought up, Valerie, about that. I think the density of apartments, I'm looking at this. It's really small on my printout, so I'm seeing that it's about 500 units between the 3 apartment complexes. Is that accurate?
I believe it is 611.
611.
And that's based on the acreage and based on your 24 units per acre maximum density.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll achieve it, but if they do, that's the math.
Okay.
And we had discussed in the past, originally there's the ideas and some apartment developers looking at a higher density, but we've had some good discussions with staff and have kind of backed off that and agreed that, we're going to acquiesce and,
stick with the MF2.
Stick with your standard.
Okay. And on these neighborhoods that are townhomes, it looks like the smallest lot width is it 24 feet?
24 or 25? 24, yeah.
Okay, and it looks like that applies to this neighborhood 6, 7, and is that 9? Does 9 also have 24 foot, or is that 34?
Yes, they all have 6, 7, and 9 all have the 24 foot, and then neighborhood 8 has a slightly larger. Trust me, I can't read this chart either.
So between those 3 neighborhoods, is the intent for those lots and the improvements on those lots to remain investment property, or are they going to be sold to individuals?
The intent is for them to be sold individually. But just like any time you build any kind of neighborhood, an investor can buy a single-family house or a townhome or whatever. So I don't want to tell you there will never be an investor buying a property to rent, because we can't prevent that legally. But no, these are meant to be fee simple ownership transactions. They are townhomes rather than condos, so the property owner owns the land under his unit. And he owns basically to the middle of the common wall with the unit next door.
So for the first transaction, meaning you being the developer, the land developer, that first transaction would not be to a block investor.
No, my first transaction would be either to develop the streets and the alleys and the utilities and then sell the lots to a townhome builder, or to sell a parcel to a townhome builder who would develop his own streets and lots under our standards and then build the townhomes.
Yeah, there's a very popular cottage movement going on right now where investors are, instead of building apartment complexes, are building entire communities of rent houses.
Mm-hmm.
And although I like the idea in some places, I do not like the idea in Saginaw of us developing entire brand new rent houses.
Mm-hmm.
So long as I know that first transaction is fee simple, individual homeownership lots, then I don't know that you're going to have a challenge selling these, because there's a market for this kind of property in this region. So I think that density is good. I think it's, as long as it's not investment property. I am a little concerned about the buffer that you're talking about. I think the retaining wall you're talking about along the railroad tracks extends along the commercial property past that first, it looks like neighborhood 4's small detention area. That's a detention area there.
Yeah, we have a little portion of our property that drains back to the west instead of to the east, and so we will have some detention where that crosses under the railroad.
And then you have, it looks like it transitions into neighborhood 6, and it looks like neighborhood 6 actually has a roadway in between the wall and the tracks. Is that correct? Is that a road that I'm
That's an
looking at?
alley.
It's an alley. Okay. And can a fire vehicle go down that alley? What's the width?
Typical alley paving, we haven't worked this out with staff yet, but we've actually we're providing them a typical section, but a typical alley width is 12 feet.
Okay. So what another thing to think through here is in the derailment scenarios that we have seen just to the south of this location across from Meacham Field, derailment debris scatters out to about 80 feet from the tracks. So I'm not a fan of putting a kid's bedroom within 80 feet of railroad tracks. And I'm really not a fan of not being able to access private property that may become subject to chemical spills and things of that nature that come from the things that are transported up and down our railway here.
Mm-hmm.
So that alleyway may not be enough.
Wouldn't that alleyway have to meet standards for fire vehicles? Per our ordinances, wouldn't that have to be?
We've already had that discussion with Don and his group about access for the fire department and having sufficient radius to make the turns, and then I guess some scenarios where you might have a rear lot fire, and having accessibility. So it's on the radar, but we don't have all the information yet. But those are issues that we'll work out with the developer.
And I might add, our plan is basically, honestly, to take the standards from, there are a lot of cities in the Metroplex, Plano, Frisco, Carrollton, North Dallas suburbs, that are primarily, all the single-family houses have alleys. And so our plan was to basically say, okay, here's the standards from another city that's been through this, vetted this, they live with them, and let's use their standards since they're proven up, I guess, from a city standpoint.
And if you, absent the fact that we transport some of the most toxic chemicals on the face of the earth, not 40 feet away from these homes that you've designed here. I think those alleyways are perfectly fine, but I want to be very cautious about any development that we place in close hazard. I don't want to wake up while I'm alive at any point in time in the next 30 years and find that kids were killed in these houses because the houses are built too close to the railroad tracks.
You and me both.
So that's just a very sensitive area for me. But still, I think the density's fine as long as we're talking about fee simple individual lots. Now, the entryway, I think that detention area is great. I liked Cindy's idea of potentially making both retention ponds versus one detention pond versus a retention pond. I think that there's opportunity there to even enhance the sale value of neighborhood 8 if there's waterfront that could be introduced to that area. The reason that I think that there's something to be said about that is as you're making this S curve right there by Wagley Roberts, you're looking straight at that dry detention pond when you're coming from the east. And if you go about, a half a mile to the east of this intersection, you'll come to the intersection of Comanche Springs and East Bailey Boswell Road, where there is a 2-acre dry detention pond there today that looks like a gym sock hanging on a shower rod.
I'm taking that's not a compliment.
No. And we don't want to duplicate that.
I understand.
And I know that there are ways that you can really make a dry detention area look good. But if we have the opportunity to add water there, I think that everybody on the council would agree that that's favorable.
Yeah, that's a
We
good
like
visual.
that idea.
Duly noted.
Good visual.
The retail, I really liked the idea that you had about having some professional office space on the second floor. That's something we don't have.
Right.
That's something that's missing in our community. It's a place that I would be looking for, quite frankly. So if those kinds of opportunities are made available, especially if they may be a second floor over a restaurant that overlooks the water. I may not necessarily want to look across the pond and see Trinity Industries, because that's really the backstop of the pond when you're looking out from the restaurant, which brings me to my last comment, is that curve right there in front of Trinity Industries. When we load that curve up with the traffic coming off of this Belt Mill Parkway, to the east, we have the Comanche intersection, the Comanche Springs intersection. Then we have the Wagley-Robertson intersection. And then we have the preemptive light at the foot of the bridge, meaning that if there's a train, light turns red, and everybody stops there instead of up close to the tracks. And then we have the lights themselves that are on the other side of the overpass that at rush hour will more than likely put cars onto the bridge, waiting for lights to turn at Old Decatur. This is going to be a very, very congested area. And I know that you guys have done traffic studies. I know you've looked at it. I think that, obviously, Kimley Horn, as this continues to develop, this is going to be a very sensitive area for me, especially to be looking at. Is there any reason in the world we have not considered, and I'm going to use the word, a traffic circle here in this location?
Honestly, in looking at the first time, and that was brought up to us as a thought, I might let your professionals speak to it, but the first thing is, I don't know how you build a traffic circle with first going to Trinity Industries. You're going to have to take a bunch of property off of them as well as off of us. And I'm not sure that the two roads together are more conducive to a traffic circle or if that situation would be worse, honestly. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if Andrew's prepared to speak, but I know that one of the issues, you're right, it's going to be a level of service D or F in that corridor, and it's a complex interweave of signalization between Wagley Robinson and Jarvis and Bailey Boswell, I mean, the boulevard. I think Kimley Horn is looking at a queuing analysis to see if a roundabout is even feasible, because with the queues that would occur would back up into the roundabout, you'd basically have a static situation where
Understood.
No one could go anywhere. I mean, it would just be a lockup, but that analysis has not been done yet, to my knowledge. But they will look at it.
Yeah, my thought was more along the lines of a much larger traffic circle, but the way that this entry has now been configured with the detention ponds, the only real estate you would have naturally to put a traffic circle would be back into those detention pond areas, and I think we're taking away from the gateway look to the community by doing that. It's just, Rick, I totally get what a level of service D and F means, but if you don't mind, can you remind us what a level of service D and a level of service F represents in terms of minutes?
I couldn't, because I'm not really an expert in traffic engineering. Maybe Andrew can type in, but the lower the level on the alphabet, the more delay.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can speak offhand to what a D translates to, but D and E and F are on, like Rick said, on the lower end of level of service, but be happy to get that information and send it to the council. But one just side note, I think once all of these signals do go in, there will have to be a timing study or synchronization study to make sure that, Mr. Farr, as you described, all the signals are talking to each other and they're working to move traffic smoothly.
Yeah, because between Jarvis and Old Decatur Road, once we have the Knowles traffic signal go in, I think we're going to have a total of 8 signals in that stretch.
I think that Mr. Whitaker, who's our traffic engineer with Kimley Horn, has said they will operate much like an interchange on the freeway, so they will have to be timing between all the signals to make it work efficient.
Okay, so without the traffic circle, I would like, in the PID consideration, as we start talking about a PID, if there's some way that we could convince our friends at Trinity Industries to put in a relatively dense foliage screen on their side of East Bailey Boswell to screen off that property. We've got some pretty nice homes that are developed now that when you walk out the front door, that the beautiful R panel, that tan R panel siding is the first thing you see when you come out in the morning and get into your car and go to work, and it's the last thing you see after you check the mail. So nobody enjoys looking at those big industrial buildings right across the street from where they're at. And when we build this pond and this beautiful overlook, as I'm sitting out there drinking my whatever, and looking across the water, I don't want to be looking at Trinity Industries while I'm enjoying my cocktail before I go to dinner and then go for dessert.
Maybe we do some kind of business improvement grant with Trinity Industries.
I think so. I think that's important to make that scene really work. I think it looks great from an entry perspective, but I think once you build that pond and you set in these restaurant pads and you start looking back there to the east and to the southeast, it's not an attractive sight. You got some water in between you and the non-attractive site, but it's still not an attractive site. So I think that's something that we should be looking into.
Okay.
Thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Charles?
Nothing.
Nothing? All right. All right, so thanks, sir. I enjoyed the presentation. I like your concept a lot better than I appreciate them things. I had a couple questions. So parcel number 1, the commercial down there overlooking the detention pond. My assumption is those restaurants will be restaurants and not fast food.
Yes, no, that's absolutely the intent,
Okay.
is to have, and I can't tell you what level.
No,
I mean,
sure.
Right now, everything is kind of weird in the restaurant industry until the COVID thing gets a little better. But yes, no, these are not intended to be fast food restaurants.
Because I think that's the council's expectation as well, and I want to make sure that's clear, very clear, because I think it sounds like a great concept as well. A couple things, and I like the idea of water on both sides. I like the idea of water. Looking at the densities, specifically neighborhood 6 and neighborhood 10, those would look a lot better to me if there was some kind of a micro park in each one of those neighborhoods. Don't know what, don't know how big, but let's think about that, how we can make that happen.
Agreed.
That would really break things up. A little more green would look really nice. So when I'm looking at this, that one thing that jumped out at me, you mentioned a potential for a multifamily senior. Would that be in addition to the multifamily you already have on here or in place of?
If we had a place for it, yes, it would be in addition to, and that's
Okay.
why I brought it up, just to hear your thoughts on that. Is that, should we continue those discussions, or?
My thought is yes, absolutely, because
Yes.
we have a senior living here in Saginaw. They've got a waiting list. I think it would be very popular. That's my opinion. What does the rest of the council think?
I do.
And I would love to replace some of those townhomes with a senior living.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be, what do y'all think?
I do.
Okay.
And we, honestly, we like that because seniors tend to get out and walk. They're going to get out and go down and have a cup of coffee and grab something at the bookstore or whatever. They're going to really probably more so than any other demographic really kind of help drive some of that walkability and some of the things we want to create.
Sure.
And we're all getting there.
Other question I had that just popped up. So in parcel 1, where we mentioned the green space / park down there,
Yes.
you in the picture it had some playground area, so that would be potentially playground area as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. Our brainstorming of this and kind of developing it over a little bit of time is the thought was to create a trail around the lake and some kind of interest, maybe one of these things where you have like exercise stations
Sure.
around a trail or seating areas, things
Something,
like that, but
yeah.
also to have some kind of access to the water and then to have some kind of a play area, a playground somewhere so that if you're
Waiting on dinner?
If it's close enough and parents are comfortable and they want to let their kids go out and play in the playground while they're sitting around, just talking after dinner, then that could be available. So
No.
that's kind of all the thoughts that we've kind of developed, and McAdams has done a great job of kind of helping us congeal some of those into a plan that we're pretty excited about.
No, I like that as well. I think that would be great. I think parents would like that, yeah.
I like the fishing dock. Maybe put 2 of them. Kids need to learn how to fish. They do.
Good?
I agree.
Yeah.
Good.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
That's a really good idea, kids learning. I think a variety of trees might be something nice. My granddaughter wanted to have like fruit trees around town so kids could have healthy snacks while they play. We've been out walking, and she has her little pecan wheel. She's been picking up pecans. And in just 2 weekends, she can identify oak trees, magnolia trees, pine trees, especially pecans, and she takes off for those. 'Cause she knows she's got some snacks to eat. But
Learning component.
that might be, put some trees in there, identify the different kinds of trees so kids could learn the different kinds of trees.
Sure, something like that's a great idea. I
Thank you,
think.
Cindy.
That makes people want to take their kids out there, use it. So,
And snack.
and yes.
All right, council, other questions? I appreciate Charlie.
I want to go back and revisit the sound barrier wall in the alleyway. How much room is between where the sound barrier wall is and where those apartments or living quarters start?
What we've drawn right now, and I can't read it way up there on the screen, so let me find it here in my presentation.
Because what Councilmember Farr said of being, derailments, you don't want to go there. And yes, the railroads carry stuff that you don't want to know about. But how much room is in there?
Right now, what is drawn is a 40-foot buffer as a minimum. And the wall is right on the railroad line, but then a 40-foot buffer with the trail in it. That's what's in there right now.
But that does not include the 12-foot alley, or does include?
No, that does include the 12-foot alley. That's before you would come to the property line.
So you've got 52 foot then.
Yeah, so then you'd have 52 feet, and whatever distance is actually from the railroad track, from the railroad right-of-way, which is not a great deal, but it may be another 10 feet. What? Yeah.
'Cause you're gonna be
Well,
pushing the envelope.
in the way that's laid out again, that there's like a 20-foot setback from the alley right-of-way to the backs of those townhomes that are the actual buildings.
So you're talking
So
72?
you're pushing
So
the
you
80
got
foot.
60, you have 72 feet,
Yeah.
plus whatever's between the railroad right-of-way line and the actual railroad track. So if we don't have that 80 feet, we're really close. And that's something that,
Well, that's debris field.
yes, I understand.
That means the tail end of the tank was hanging 80 feet off the center line of the track. So
When you can take that much weight and that much speed at one time and you twist rail like a wet spaghetti noodle, you don't want to mess with those things.
I understand. I understand.
Charlie, keep him on the track, come on. What's the
he's
problem?
done. He's retired.
All right, any other questions? I don't want to keep this any longer. We've had a good discussion. I think you've gotten some good feedback.
I really did. I honestly appreciate that. That's exactly what we needed. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for asking.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
Appreciate it.
And
All
we'll
right,
look back for-
moving forward, item number 12, capital projects update. Andrew.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate the opportunity to be here with you to give you a brief update on the capital projects. In addition to myself, Trenton Tidwell and Brad Rusk, all from Kimley-Horn, have also joined me to give you a brief update. We realize it's getting late, so we're going to spend most of our time probably focused on the bridge. That's probably the biggest, most visible project. And then we do have a slide for each one of our projects just to remind you or jog your memory on all the other things we have going on. So we'll try and keep it brief since it's getting late, but we'll go ahead and start with the Bailey-Boswell Bridge. Dolph, if you wouldn't mind clicking us forward, and then Brad, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and kicking us off.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. I'm Brad Rusk with Kimley-Horn, and we have come on board for the Bailey-Boswell project to partner with Rick and his staff to manage the construction. I'm pleased to report that we are off to a good start on the project. We've got a good contractor. They've got a good management team for the project put together. Ongoing coordination with TxDOT, with Union Pacific, with BNSF, so we're pleased that we're doing very well so far. I'm also pleased they have submitted what's called a baseline schedule that reflects their work plan for the project, and the contractor is very motivated. They'd like to get it done early, so we're trying to encourage that to see just how quickly we can get everything done and get everything back open. So quick status on our project. We actually began construction on August 10th. They are starting with bridge foundation construction, so you may see a lot of drill shaft construction out there in that center portion of Bailey-Boswell, where they're building those foundations to bring the bridge up out of the ground. And then they are also working on one of the two Walmart driveways, the easternmost driveway. And that driveway should be opened sometime here in November. The second driveway, in respect of Walmart's holiday shopping season, is going to be deferred and will start in the first of the new year. So this graphic's pretty hard to see, but those yellow highlights reflect the areas of major work that's taking place right now. I can tell you that we'll get some of the bridge construction. It'll continue to move on once they come out of the ground. But you also begin to see in the coming months that they're going to work on these ramps on either side. They're going to come up to the bridge with MSE walls, mechanically stabilized earth walls. And so you see a lot of that work, and hopefully things will continue to progress. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Question?
Okay.
So we're looking at 5 or 6 months ahead of schedule, roughly?
The contractor has 650 days by contract to complete the project. They've initially said that they'd like to get that done a couple of hundred days early. Now, I think they may be a bit overly optimistic, and we're reviewing that schedule now to consider the phasing impacts to make sure it doesn't impact traffic and things of that nature. But we are encouraged that they are trying to get it done as quickly as possible because that's best for all parties, especially the traveling public. So we did just have a couple of photos here. There's some drill shaft construction that you're going to see. We got some big drill shafts on this project. We've got some big columns that are going to be going up. And there's some of the construction there for the driveway entrance at Walmart.
It seems like to me they're moving pretty fast. I think they are.
Other questions, council?
Any problems so far with BNSF or UP?
None that I'm aware of. They told us early on. We harassed the contractor to be very proactive with both entities, and they were able to get some pre-construction meetings, and they submitted some required submittals for work plans and things in the railroad right-of-way. The railroads are not fast.
No.
And so there have been some long review times, but as of right now, I'm not aware of any delays that have impacted the project.
That's where that 200 days will get eaten up.
Well,
is when you start.
That's why we think it's optimistic, but we're encouraged at this point.
Have they considered a railroad liaison, someone who works with the railroad usually, or does this contractor have a lot of experience with both railroads?
Well, on the management team, we have some folks that have experience working with roads. Not everyone on the contractor's management team does. But I think that the guidelines have been clearly established in the agreements and the pre-construction meetings with both railroad entities of what the expectations are. And it includes having flagmen on site. That coordination is ongoing regarding how to contact them, when the notice needs to be submitted, to make sure that we have everything in place when the contractor is ready to perform work in the right-of-way. Everything is taken care of, and we don't have additional delays in the field.
Okay. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you, Brad. And I know this, obviously, the bridge is a hot topic, so just as needed, we're happy to have Brad come give updates as needed. So we're just going to go through the rest of our projects just to jog your memory and give you the opportunity to ask questions and remind you what else we got going on. So the only other construction project that's currently going on is the 16-inch waterline project, Phase 2, which, if you remember, goes from approximately Palomino and the boulevard across Ardent Mills property to the southeast side of their property. So we're installing a 16-inch water line, about a 400-foot, 42-inch tunnel under the Saginaw Boulevard and all the rail lines across an Ardent Mills property. And so the contractor, A&A Site Construction, they're looking to get started this upcoming week, and completion is set for March 25th. So you probably won't be able to see much in the way of construction until they start doing that tunnel when they're going to shut down the Palomino side of the intersection. So that's pretty much it for construction. So we'll just flip to design briefly to remind you what we're working on. And
You introduce Trenton. Does everybody know Trenton?
I think so. I met most people at the farmer market events, or October 3rd, I met a lot of y'all too. So we have 6 to 10 projects under design, depending on how you want to count them, so I'll be pretty efficient. The first one I'll talk about is the Knowles Drive, and there are 4 phases for that. Just to remind you, the first phase is the most northern section of the roadway we're widening, and that is the primarily drainage concern that we're looking to address there. Second phase goes from the north end of the park down to the McElroy intersection, including the intersection control that will be there, and then the last phase being just south of McElroy down to Longhorn. And then the fourth phase would be the Bailey Boswell and Knowles intersection signal improvements. So phase 1 we actually submitted in late July, 60%, and we have coordinated those comments with staff, and then we are planning a site walk here in the next few weeks with Rick and Randy and I think Paul, and we'll proceed to 90% design, and our goal for that is to submit in December before end of year. Phase 2, we've been focusing more on the public involvement tasks, and so that was the October 3rd National Night Out, National Day Out event, and then we're going to repeat that and do the farmers market this Saturday with the same type of setup, I believe. I think we're all good on that. And then I won't be there, but Dana will be there. And then we are actually pausing on 60% design for that until we determine how we would like to control that intersection at McElroy and Knowles. Phase 3, we're still working on 60% design, and we plan to submit that in early 2021. And then Phase 4, about the same timeline. That one's a little more tied to the Bailey Boswell construction, so I think we're trying to pair that up whenever that completes. So the next project is North Old Decatur, and we're widening from Bailey Boswell north to the city limits, and I will give, we're working on 60% plan, so we've submitted 30%, and our goal is end of October, and right now we're still coordinating with franchise utilities and adjacent developments. I think the plan for construction is to kind of wait until those developments construct and then hopefully move forward with the roadway construction. And then WJ Bowes and Old Decatur is the project where we're replacing the signal, adding turn lanes, and the west half of the intersection is actually in Fort Worth right away, and then the rest of the intersection is owned by Saginaw. And there's a decent stretch from Old Decatur to the east along WJ Bowes. Our plan is to submit 60% in October as well. I think our goal is actually end of this week, and we've also coordinated the west leg with Fort Worth already and received their comments. They had minor comments on the turn lane striping. The last two projects are actually sidewalk projects, and they're broken into two different phases. It's hard to see on here, but the Blue Bonnet stretch is the Tarrant County funded CDBG project, and we've actually submitted 60% for that and are proceeding to final. Our goal is to bid in November. And then the other portion would be part of just the Saginaw funded along Opal and Southern. And our goal is to bid those not simultaneously, but essentially simultaneously to incentivize contractors who may win both the first project. And then the bonus slide that's not on here is the East Cement Creek project. Our plans are to submit final drawings in November and advertise that in December as long as easements and franchise utilities clear. So that's our update. I think that concludes the meeting.
Questions? Any questions, Council? Mary?
Do you have any estimate of when the Bowes and Old Decatur Road project might be complete?
The design or the construction?
The actual construction.
I might lean to Rick on that.
I think all of these projects were slated for inclusion in the bond issue in May. So it would be as soon as funding. I mean, they'll be shovel ready from the time that they're funded. Now, there may be other funding opportunities. I think Tarrant County has a bond issue that they're considering, so we can possibly add projects to their bond to partner with them on some of these projects. So maybe Dolph had a conversation with the transportation folks.
I did. I had a good phone conversation with the staff, Tarrant County transportation staff yesterday, talking about the potential for another transportation bond election similar to what paid for Longhorn Road, first phase of Bailey Boswell, and now, of course, a portion of the bridge. And it's basically they were surveying cities asking what their financial capacity was to be able to have matching funds for these projects. And so I mentioned the work that our Citizens Bond Committee had done and the fact that we already had projects identified. And as a matter of fact, we're already in the design phase for those. We will be shovel ready probably first part of next year. So I think that really gives us a leg up in terms of rankings on these projects. And specifically, we mentioned Knowles, all of Knowles, and then McElroy as well. So if that does come to fruition and they are able to sell some bonds and we qualify, we may not be issuing as much debt as we thought we were going to have to, which would be a wonderful thing.
And when is Tarrant County, is that a May bond, or they haven't set that yet?
It's very preliminary. They were going to discuss it at Commissioner's Court today, and I haven't had an update.
Okay. Thank you, Dolph. All right. Cindy?
I'd like to, first of all, thank you guys, Kimley Horn, for coming out at the National Day Out in the Park thing. I saw you had a lot of activity over at your area. I also saw police department, not following the traffic circle, but, we won't go into there. But one of the things that you relayed back to me, or maybe it was Andrew, I can't remember, said that a lot of people came up with questions and they were opposed to the traffic circle. And after you guys speaking with them, and we're talking maybe half a dozen families, that they felt more comfortable with the traffic circle idea. I would like for Gabe to ask his staff to publicize this, on the website, possibly even on the marquee, on our Facebook page, that these people will be out there. And if they have any concerns about the traffic circle, invite them to go out and speak to these people.
Thank you, Cindy. Good point.
We're happy to do that. As Andrew mentioned, staff's going to be there. Trenton, do you really have an excuse in front of the council to not be there on Saturday? I mean, really?
I mean, Trent, I'll be there, so.
That is dedication, sir.
Too,
no, we'll put that out on our Facebook page. And, for the record, I've received 3 responses from folks. I've copied the council on all. I think after they have seen the presentation that Jay did, and there's a greater level of comfort. So we're happy to continue the public education piece.
Come back out on the Christmas one. They like it. It won't hurt.
All right, other questions for Trenton or Andrew? Everybody good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Trenton.
Thank you.
All right, so at 8:05, we reconvene back into regular session. Then at 8:06, we continue into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.087. We will return to adjourn. Janice, are you still there? Can you hear me, Janice? I'll wake her up. Hold on. We got everybody here. Let's wait for everybody. All right, 8:33, we're back from executive session. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Cindy? Okay, Cindy made the motion to adjourn. Charlie second. All those in favor? At 8:33, we're adjourned.
Right.
Janice, text me if you can't hear me. Everybody turn off your